Hello and welcome, Mark here, and in this episode we're going to take a look at the never-ending granny blanket, or as I prefer to call it, the continuous granny blanket. Now, the blanket I've got here in front of you is actually not one I made myself. It was actually made by a cousin or my sister, and as you can see, they only used the 2-stitch, not the 3-stitch. But this is a continuous, never-ending blanket. Starts in the middle, when I can find the middle. I've lost it now, there we go. Find the middle, and it's just continuous, going round and round and round. Now this is the circle starting, this is the way they do it. And this is where it starts there, where they go around that way and then continue. Alright, I think it's that one. Where is it? I can't quite see it on the table. Yes, it's there, this corner, because they do this bit first and then they continue round, and that's how they do it. That's the way they prefer to make the granny blanket. I've just folded it up, not very good, but I've just folded it up. Okay, so the reason why they call it the never-ending granny is because you're not joining the round with a slip stitch, then slip stitching it into a corner, and then chaining up to start the next row or round, whichever you prefer. So in that case, you're working a continuous corner. You're just going round and round and round until you get to the size you want it. This is quite big. And this was only done with 2 balls of DK weight yarn. In this video, I will show you how to start the never-ending granny blanket, how to finish it, and also a little tweak on how to keep it even, and I'll just show you in a moment because I've got some small samples here to show you. So with all that said and done, let's get crafting, shall we? As you can see, I have 2 samples here. They're almost the same, well, they are the same size really, just looks a bit smaller there. And this is where I started. I like to do it the square way of starting rather than the circle way. The only difference between this one and this one is this one has a chain 1 spaces between your granny stitches, where this one doesn't, as you can see, because they're closer together. So if you can see that, let's bring it down a little bit. See, this one doesn't have the chain 1 spaces, and no tweaking really is required for this. But if you're doing chain 1 spaces, and as you can see, it's wider apart, which is the way I prefer to do it. On the extended row, is I miss out a chain 1 here at the start and a chain 1 just before the corner. So miss the chain 1 after the corner and miss the chain 1 before the corner. I'll show you what I mean. Yeah, I think that was it. So yeah, so we'll just get started. So I'll just grab some yarn to show you how it starts. They both start the same way. Just you're going to use some of this lovely shade of blue. Pretty that. Oh, can't even get me hook in the hole there. Oh dear me. Right. So we chain 4. This is just a typical starting of a granny square. And then do a slip stitch. This is the only time really you do a slip stitch. It's a slip stitch to join that round together. So you now have a ring. Chain 3. And this chain 3 does count as a treble, because we are using trebles. It is a granny stitch, so we tend to use trebles for this. even though you can actually use half trebles. So that is classed now there as your first granny stitch. Chain 2, that's just for a corner. Always chain 2 for a corner. Excuse me, sniffling. Another granny stitch there. So now we're up to the corner again, so we do another chain 2. And I'm working over this tail, because then that way it just helps. I like to work over it because I can make the centre hole smaller if I require, or just weave the rest of it in and cut it off. That is the third stitch now, so you got 1, 2 and 3. Shunt it over a little bit more to give that space if needed to do the last stitch in this round. So it starts the same way. It's only when you go on to your second round. And there you go. That is now your starting point. You do not chain 2 and join. You chain 1 and then into this turning chain, the start of the row, you'll go into the second chain and you will do a granny stitch into there. I don't know if you can see that. Just bring it up a little bit more. You chain 3, so you got 1, 2 and 3. Go into the second one and work a granny stitch. This is where you start making it into a continuous. So you've got to try and get all 3 stitches into that second chain. So then you still have 1 left here, right at the top, still there, just squeezed in there. Right. Now we chain 2, because now we're working the corner, and then into the space, just pull it apart a little bit to make a granny stitch there. And that is your start of your continuous turning. And now we just continue working around until we get to this side here. So I'm just going to quickly do that, because it's the last side. This side where it continues is where you need to do a little bit of tweaking. So I like to chain 1 and do another corner, so that's granny stitch, chain 2 and a granny stitch, and that is all you're doing on this row. One more, and then chain 1 and then move over to the next corner, and I shall come back to you before I finish this corner here. Right, I'm just completing this last corner here. So we'll just finish this corner off, which is just want another granny stitch in there. Oops. Split the yarn there. And as you know, I've been chaining 1. Now you don't chain 1, and you go over to the next space. And I don't chain 1 because we're just coming up to the corner again, and this is how you just go. You just keep going round now. That is it. I'll show you that again on this final row, because this row has 1 more granny stitch than the others. I've only done 2 rounds. You've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and this one has 3. So it adds 1 stitch more, and to try and keep it so it doesn't fan out and go a little bit strange, I take away this chain 1 at the end of a corner, and then I eliminate the chain 1 before you start the next corner. But I do the chain 1s all in the middle. There you go, and you just continue up Then chain 1 then. Chain 1, corner. So as you know, all corners are a granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch. That's 1 granny stitch, chain 2, and another granny stitch. Or you can think of it as 3 trebles, chain 2, 3 trebles. And that's what all corners will have. I'll just keep going round with this, and I'll meet you back up when I do this final round, which has that extra stitch on. I shall meet back up with you in a more. Right, just moved it in a little bit closer there. I'm just coming up to this final round again, just completing this last corner, and I'll show you what I mean with a little bit of a tweak to keep it balanced. So straight after the corner, don't do a chain 1, leave it, and go straight into the next space to do a granny stitch. Then chain 1, and then next granny space. Now this is the granny space that's going to take you to the next corner. So because we were coming up to a corner, I don't do the chain 1. I leave that and then go straight into the corner. And I find just missing those 2 chain 1s off helps to keep it balanced. And then it still looks a bit lopsided, and they usually are when you first start them. But once you've blocked them, and mind you of course, the bigger you get on these blankets, the more it straightens up anyway. And of course when you block it, you would pin these corners out to size. Put that down a minute. And you would keep it level. And I would also end it there. I would end it with just a chain, a 2 stitch at the end, because that keeps it nice and straight, rather than doing a full granny stitch on the corner. Just like I have done with this one here. Just 2 stitches there, and you see the more round you do, the more it seems to straighten up. Yeah. And if you're one of those crocheters that don't like to do the chain 1 spaces and want it smaller spaces, you don't need to do any tweaking at all. You can just keep going round and round and round. And let me just have a look at adding a new colour. That was the next one I'm going to do. So I'll just grab another ball to add you with this one. So I'll be right back. Right, just grabbed another bit of colour. I think it's the same as that one actually. I do have a lot of these tiny little bits of leftovers hanging around. So just get that ready. So we just get to the corner. I've done 2 stitches. So start the 3rd, but don't finish it. Grab the new yarn. This is a bit thinner than this one. Do your chain 2 for corner. And then continue with a new yarn. Now that's adding, if you want to change colour, you would do it, I would do it in this corner, because this corner is where it continues. But if you run out of this yarn, the main colour, if you're doing it all in one colour like this, you can just join it any way you wish. It doesn't even matter if it's in the middle of a row. You just join your new ball and just carry on going. You can knot it together, join with a slip stitch, whichever. Right. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Let me just check. Yes, it is. That's everything I wanted to cover about the never-ending granny blanket, or as sometimes, well, as I prefer to call it, the continuous granny blanket. So, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe. And until next time here at Mark Makes Stitches, bye.